Good morning, everyone. It's good to have all of you here in our Bible class hour this morning. We're excited this morning to have a special guests with us this morning, Brother Dale and Connie Fielder from far Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. A beautiful place, and it's great to have them here with us today. And they're going to talk about, Dale's going to be speaking this morning in our Bible class hour about a work that they've been doing for a long time in South Texas. And our Steve and Becky Clark have been involved in that for a long time as well. I've heard many things from both of them about what a wonderful experience to serve God in far South Texas. So this morning, we're going to encourage you to do a couple of things this morning. I want you to listen very carefully to Brother Dale this morning. James and I went down there this last spring and kind of saw some of the things that were going on down there. But I want you to listen very closely to Dale and listen to the things he's talking about that the church and the churches in South Texas are doing to spread the good news of Jesus Christ in South Texas and across the border into Mexico. What I'd like for you to do this morning and encourage you to do this morning is to imagine yourself in some way or another helping with this particular work. I think we've been talking about doing this for a long time and sharing this congregation with people around our country to give us a different option for a mission trip, short-term mission trip. I think this is a great opportunity for us to do that. So I want you to imagine yourself either going on this trip. If you can't go on this trip, how could I help those that are going on this trip? Okay? Because I think that is just as important as the senders and the goers. Okay? Dale?
Good morning. Really appreciate you guys allowing me to come in.
You're there.
Mission Sunday. That's the wrong, there we go. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. We are you want me down here or up on?
Perfect, right there.
Great. We are a small congregation in South Texas. We have about 50 members. And we started out a number of years ago because of something very bad that happened. But we found out that God can use something that seems to be bad to us for something good in the long run. We had a freeze, and the freeze lasted about 5 days. It was below freezing in the Rio Grande Valley, froze most of the orchards down there. Many people went broke. The Grove Care people that owned orchards. And they announced it on the news media that, man, there's all kind of trouble happening in these places they call colonias, which are simply substandard subdivisions that people had moved, mostly Hispanic, had moved across the border and started establishing. We drove by those every day. We didn't pay any attention to them, but a couple of the deacons' wives in the little church there decided to take a few people and go down there and look around and see what was happening in those colonias. And what they found were conditions that were just not what we were expecting. They were incredibly poor, they were illegal, they were language barriers, just everything you could imagine could be against them. And yet they had found a toehold in our country by being able to buy a piece of land and pay for it monthly and become part of this American dream that they had heard about. So we realized when we started doing this, the conditions in the colonias, and we realized that there were no churches there. And so it got our attention, and we decided to try to do something about it. Colonias in South Texas is the highest unemployment, highest poverty levels, third world diseases. It just had all the highest marks all over the nation. The University of Texas down there did a study, and they said, let's identify all of those different colonias along the border. They found that there was like 1,500 of them from El Paso to Brownsville, 800 plus maybe 850 of them were in the county that we live in. So we were in the heart of that condition. What we decided to do was to hire a minister and put him in an area, let him knock doors, and if he was successful, then we'd do it again. There are so many colonias around there. We knew they wouldn't be coming to our English-speaking congregation in far, but if we could plant a minister down there, maybe we could get some activity. And sure enough, Ramiro Cerna was the first gentleman that we hired back in 1986. He began his worship singing songs under a mesquite tree. Kids came out of the woodwork. A group called Aggies for Christ came down after he filled up his house with members, and we built an addition onto the back of his house and filled that up in a pretty short time. He had 100 meeting there. And the first time we built a block and brick type of building was the next one, and it wasn't too long before he was able to fill that building up also. Small beginnings. The idea of this planting churches in South Texas did not appeal to the church that had started it, and several of the members decided to leave. They didn't all leave together. It wasn't like a split, but they were kind of floundering around looking for what they were going to do, and they found another church, and they weren't having any luck. My uncle happened to know all of them, and they decided to start planning a house church. And they were putting all their, trying to figure out all the rules and reasons and problems and good things. And my uncle said, why don't y'all just meet and see what happens? And sure enough, they did. And next thing happened in 2003, a church over in Far was going to close their doors. They knew we worked with the Hispanic community, and they asked us to come over for a meeting, which we did. And we're sitting there, and they're in this building, holds about 400 people, and they got a Spanish work next door, had about 80 people in it. And there were about 19 folks in this congregation, and they were getting older, and they decided they couldn't afford the building anymore. Wanted us to take over the Hispanic work. We, in the meantime, were looking at maybe building our own congregation, and had gone to the bank and had committed for a $200,000 loan that we were going to, 3 or 4 of us were going to put our names on the bottom line, which we were fretting, and we asked when they were going to close their doors, and they were going to close the doors the same day we were going to sign on the loan. And somebody said, well, why don't we just merge? They already got a building. Sure enough, that's the first thing we did, and it's been a wonderful experience ever since then. That was the start of it was 36 years ago. That was about 2003, about 19 years ago when we merged with FAR. And since then, that graphic's a little off on the bottom left there, but most of that's correct. Those are the churches that have been planted because of that idea of taking a minister and putting him out in that area, letting him knock doors. We would buy a little piece of property and build a house on it that had enough room inside it where he could have his meetings with his people. When he had 70 people gathered in that building, then that was our trigger to build a building. And that's where groups like you came involved. Being a 50-member church in South Texas, we didn't have the money to build these buildings, so we invited groups to come down, bring volunteers, kids, adults, people that knew how to build, people that didn't know how to build, and they stayed in our houses. And we fed them in the morning and took them to the work site, and they got off, and we bathed them at night and fed them, and then did the same thing in the morning. Well, with 10 families, 8 families in our church, and we got a group of 30 coming down. We'd have to take 5 boys one week, and we did this for like 10 weeks during the summer. So the gentleman that was in charge of all this was always under the pressure of everybody complaining at him about the groups that were coming down for the summer. But by doing that, we were able over the years to have this kind of look on the map. Currently, we are full-time supporting 22 ministers. They are in the United States and in Mexico, and 1 in India. We have 5 men that we support part-time. Our goals is to plant 2 churches every 10 years in the States, and we have a spot in Mexico we'd like to plant 5 more churches in the next 10 years over there. Hispanic churches typically have a tough time developing leadership. They're very picky about their elders. If that elder's wife doesn't come to Wednesday night, it's hard for that guy to get elected as an elder. So we're trying to teach them and to encourage them to be more available to having, instead of having qualifications, to have qualities, as it lists in the Bible, and not be quite so strict on them. We're trying to develop the leadership. We're trying to transform more of the responsibility, the financial responsibility over the Hispanic populations, which they're doing a real good job, and trying to get up to 200 baptisms per year. Our goals at FAR, really interesting thing that we didn't plan on that happened in FAR was that when people come across the border, they're usually illegal, they don't speak English, financial problems, transportation problems, and they're living in these colonias. The kids have to be educated in English. That's our laws. So the children become Americanized much quicker than the parents do. So our first generation families that are coming over are not going to come to the FAR Church of Christ that speaks English. There's no chance of it. But the minister that we have down there in the colonia is knocking doors, and he may meet some of these families and get them to come in. When that child, the second generation, comes up, they're educated. They're usually, by this time, have their citizenship. And when they have children, the third generation are now professionals, teachers, CPAs. They've gone to college. They're coming back to McAllen, Harlingen, Edinburgh, towns around where we live, and they're not looking to go back into the colonias to that substandard area. They're looking for English-speaking churches of Christ. And what we didn't understand when this thing started was that the way our valley looked, when I was a kid, there was 75% Anglo in the Rio Grande Valley. And now it's 85, 90% Hispanic. Man, it has completely flipped over. Well, if our churches don't change and the demographics don't change, we're going to be stuck with a bunch of dying churches. This lady here, third from the left, Anai, is that right? Anai Isigiri, grandfather was the first man that we built a house for in a little colonia called Las Milpas. He had one son that he had gotten over to the United States. His wife and 11 kids were still in Mexico. And we added on to his house, and he finally got everybody over. And that church in Las Milpas, if you go down there, everybody looks just alike. That family of 12 has had kids and family, and they've grown up, and I can't tell them apart. But that granddaughter there had a house in Edinburgh and was struggling with some things. And we decided to help her out. This is a group of volunteers that come down. We tried to improve where she was living. It was just so dilapidated and having so many troubles, we decided to tear it down. We had one house left that we have quit building houses as we had done for years and started doing more remodeling. It allows us to do more families. We add bedrooms, fix siding, new roofs, bathrooms, that sort of thing, and it puts us with the family, gives us more connections, fellowship with that family. So we tore that house down, and we are in the process now. We had a group of college kids come down from Florence, Alabama, and they fell in love with this family, and they decided that they wanted to complete it. So they went back to their members, and they sent us $13,000 to complete the house that we were working on, which is this one. We finished the sheetrock and electrical. I think you worked on that house, did you, Steve? And we're getting ready next month to move that house and put it over there on that property for that lady. So that's kind of how all of this, she is now worshiping with us in FAR. So if all of those kids and those congregations around, we have any kind of success in this thing when they come back after they've gotten their education and stuff, our FAR church is going to be a tremendous place with numbers and people that have already experienced what churches can do when you reach out and try to love your neighbor. This is a kind of a year in review. I went back to 2019 because, you know, 20 and 2021 are the COVID years and things, we didn't do the same thing. We had 29 mission teams come down that year from all over the country, as far as away as Virginia, and they had as many as 5 and as many as 73 in a group, and would come down and stay with us. First group, you might have a knowledge of some of these. Who's that guy on the right? Oh, yeah. Mr. Steve, came down, and this was in They like to get out of the cold weather, so they'll come down in the wintertime and work with us. We worked with Laura Bursiaga, and she had gotten, she'd had a baby, she had high blood pressure, and she'd taken some Tylenol, and it messed up her kidneys, and she had to go on dialysis. So her mom said, come on back and live with me, so we added 2 rooms on the back of her house, and so these guys came down and helped us finish those rooms. And then we have different kind of projects that happen when we're doing this. Rebecca Clark comes down and does a sewing mission and gets with the ladies and brings them out and gives them tools that they can use to supplement their income. They can sell things at flea market. They can encourage other people. They actually send things down to a little church in Aguas Caliente, Mexico, and do the same thing we do. They're trying to support other congregations as we support them and follow that same model. And she's been a big help. It's not just a small thing. They have many women come in there. They have many projects. They got sewing machines everywhere. They're fixing sewing machines, and they're bringing them in and cleaning them and making things. It's really a neat time to see this. Sojourners come down in February. They came 3 weeks in 2019. They stay at our mission center. You can see the mission center in the background there, but we have clean-outs and electrical hookups. Excuse me. We could serve as many as 10 of those motorhomes at a time when we're having those guys down there. And then they work on all types of construction projects, come and worship with us at FAR, which is very encouraging for us. That's from Alpine, which is in Longview, came down. Each of these little congregations that send their teams down usually will pick one of the Hispanic churches and work with them. The Hispanic church will normally feed them one time, but the man that's the minister of that church will decide what family is going to be helped. He knows who's faithful and how to help the different people there. If we tried to pick them, we'd be just guessing who would need the help. This group is from Nixa, Missouri. We started in 2017, realized that we were turning groups down. So we had a man that was a preacher at one of our churches leave suddenly. We had trouble finding a replacement, and somebody suggested, well, let's use this property for an additional mission center. So we converted a kind of a house church looking place where it will hold 24 people, and it really has become effective. In fact, this summer we've only got 1 week open in the small unit that is available for the teams. The guy on the right is Mr. Jose Cabello. He's the director of the Hispanic Preaching School. The guy on the left is a guy named Alejandro Barrios, and he's from Reynosa, has a church over there. And in the valley, there's a thing called Maquiladoras. Y'all have heard of NAFTA? It's a free trade arrangement with another country, so that like, Zenith can send product down to the valley, goes into a free trade zone. They can send it over to Mexico, and they use the cheap labor there, and they put the TVs together, ship them back, and they're only taxed on the gain in value, and it saves a lot of money on that. But Reynosa's got 750,000 people, but there are 200 Maquiladora plants in the Reynosa area. They can't supply enough talent workers to fill up the needs that these plants have. So Alejandro met a young man. His dad had lived in a town called Chontla, Mexico. His dad was a Pentecostal preacher, and his dad said, I want you to go. His son said, I'm going to go get a job at the Maquiladora plant. He said, when you get up there, I want you to find a church, and I want you to go to it. Well, he found Alejandro's church. And when he was studying with Alejandro, he said, well, this isn't what my dad's teaching. He said, would you come down and teach my dad what's going on and the truth here? And he said he would. So Alejandro went down to Chontla, which is about a 9-hour drive over the roughest roads I've ever been over, and studied with him about 6 months. We paid, he went once a week every month for about 6 months. And he was sleeping in their little bed in their little hut one night, and he heard the wife complaining to the husband about, You're spending all your time studying the Bible. He said, but you're not out in the field working. We need the income to support our family. So Alejandro, the next day, said, let's go out in the field. I'll help you work. he gave the family his income that he made out of the field and continued studying with him. The long story short, he converted the entire family, converted the entire congregation. They had 22 people meeting in their little congregation. And we decided to support the preacher down there after that conversion. That map shows you about where Chantla is. It's south of Tampico, up in the mountains. It is off the grid. In that first picture, you saw a little satchel. Our director of the preacher school has developed a thumb drive with all of the curriculum of the preacher school on that thumb drive, so he can put it in that computer, take it down there. He doesn't need to be on the internet, and he can study and go to school and learn about it. This was our communal kitchen area. Mission trips are very interesting. Our young man that's taking over my spot, this was his first mission trip, and he's a what do you call him? Health nut. And he was getting ready to dip his spoon in that bowl, and his face was green as I've ever seen it. It was hilarious. This is the little family that meets down there. There's Santos Gil is the preacher and his wife, Victoria. There's the little building they had in our gathering at the deal. We found a MAGI. Y'all know what MAGI is? That's a healing hand sends out. The MAGI stands for Make a Godly Impact. And churches, Christ all over the country fill these boxes with goodies for kids, for girl kids and boy kids and different ages. And we distribute those down in the valley. We've distributed many, many of them. And all of a sudden we're down at a mission trip and somebody finds a MAGI box that's been just how in the world it got down there. You know, God has his ways of doing things. And then we delivered the laptop for the people that they could have their, and kind of did a little ceremony there to distribute that hardware to him. In June, we have our preacher school graduation, Hispanic preacher school. It's attended by all the congregations. The director's in the middle there, Jose Cabello and his wife, Mary Lou. That's the 2018 graduates. School of Preaching is in 2 locations. We have one in Palmview, and then the Las Milpas campus, it's about 25 miles away. We have a medical mission. A guy from San Antonio Northwest Church of Christ comes down and goes into Mexico, does a gynecological mission, and he brings down with him an optometrist. We're involved. This is the MAGI program. We're the only domestic distribution center for MAGI. They deliver all over the world, but they allow us to use their products. We received 7,000 boxes in 2019. That's our mission center. Inside it, we use that to sort and separate the boxes. The teams come in from our churches and help us get those boxes sorted. And then we take them out into the community. If we're going to plant a church in a particular area, we'll go up and down the streets. Hey, you got any kids? And yeah, a 7-year-old girl, and we give her a deal. Why are you doing this? So, well, we're planting a church over here. We wanted to introduce ourselves, put a little Bible in it, and talk to the family some. It's a great tool for when groups come down. If y'all send a youth group down in the summertime, you got a choice of doing VBSs or distributing MAGI boxes to where we're going to be planting a church. That's one of the little children receiving the box. McDermott out of Dallas, a big supporter of ours. Every child that is in the U.S. and about 8 churches in Mexico receive holiday gifts. They send their picture up. The churches take the picture. A family will take that child and they'll go out and buy that child something, put it in the package, and then we go up in November and pick those packages up and bring them back. We have one of our members has a tractor trailer rig, and he'll help us go pick those up. And then the churches come down, and we actually have holiday parties and give those gifts out to the children, and they get to participate in that distribution. I have one little story I need to tell. How's my time?
Oh, you're good. 15 minutes.
Okay. We had a church that kept telling me about the dresses. Man, did you see those dresses? Weren't they great? And I said, yeah, those are great dresses. I had no clue what they were talking about. A church in Manassas had a group of ladies. It was a pretty good-sized congregation, widows, ladies that had never been involved in mission work at all. And they were sewing dresses, and they had a connection with the McDermott Church of Christ, and they were making 300 dresses, sending them down to McDermott, who was gift wrapping them and put them in the package and sent them to us. So I never saw it. It was already gift wrapping in the package. So I'm going along with them, and a friend of ours from McDermott, we flew up to Manassas, and we were talking to them about the program and trying to get them more involved. And I saw their sewing room and what those ladies were doing, and then I realized that they were sending those dresses, and they had never seen any of the children that had received a dress. So that next December, I immediately went out. As soon as they opened their package, I said, y'all grab a dress and go back room and put it over what you're wearing, and so we can take a picture and send it up to Manassas and tell them about what's going on. The holiday parties are really, really a fun time for us. Our last group comes down from Florence, Alabama, Cross Point. That's the group, that was the year before they did this with Anai, her house, but it's the same group that decided to help us fund the rest of that house. And then we do MAGI distribution throughout the year. There's another thing called Christian Relief Fund that we are, I think, the only group in the United States where they allow us to use this program. We have 62 children. Each child must send in a report card and a thank you note. Sponsors give about $35 a month, of which we receive $30 a month, which we give all 100% of it to the child. But we don't buy food. We do buy a little food, Thanksgiving things like that. But we normally buy things they don't get through the programs that the counties and cities have, shoes and sheets and towels. And I saw one picture even had light bulbs. One time the girls went out and bought them light bulbs, things that you wouldn't think about. But we got a response from one of the children that said, I'd never had a pillow before. You know, this was really something special for them. The way we do it is we have 5 churches on this side of the border. We buy the goods in bulk, and then we split it up between how many kids each one of those 5 churches had. Then the churches come and pick up their goods and take it to their congregation, and then they sort it out and give it to the kids, break it down, and give the items to each individual kid. That's one of the young girls that's in the program. By the way, when they gave their talk, they sponsored 9,000 children around the world. They got 60 in Ukraine, and they haven't been able to communicate with them since that war started. So they're refugees somewhere, and we're trying to figure out how we can help those youngsters. I skipped the summer program, and I kind of wanted to concentrate that to kind of let you see how the summer program works. This is usually the kids in school. They get out for the summer. They want to volunteer for summer work, kind of get a little feel for mission experience. This is our mission center. You can see there's a place for them to do games, and that's where they eat. There's a kitchen in the back, got ice, big old ice machine, and a lawn washer and dryer. And on each side, there's 2 sections. It's a 4-quadrant type of building. Boys are on the right, 2 sections. Each section has its own bathroom, and the girls are on the left. 2 sections, each section have the bathroom. Of course, the bedrooms are pristine when those kids get in there. I stuck my head in, I went, oh, I gotta have a picture of this. They go out and they paint. We got a group of 40 kids that come down. We'll split them up. Usually the girls and the youngest of the kids will go out and do paint sections. The afternoons are so hot, the summertime in South Texas, we encourage not to do any construction, and they'll do VBSs for whatever Hispanic church that they're sponsoring. And then we do construction projects. This is the Juarez family, had a dirt floor, and they put in concrete floor for them. Second week, we got the group, I believe this is from Alpine, painting same way, and then VBSs, and they continue with the construction. So one group does tear down and stud walls, next group comes in, put in siding, roofing, and we just continue with the projects. A lot of them come and worship at FAR. We love to have them come on Wednesday night, let the kids do the worship service. It's very encouraging for us to see the youngsters involved in that. It's a really good experience for them also. Dermott came down, they brought 73, so we got to have 7 teams that go out, so it kind of takes us to our limit. But they've been doing it the longest period of time and are very efficient. They've got their own guys that are capable of putting together the programs and watching it. That particular year, right in the middle of our summer, we had a horrible rainstorm, and Weslaco got flooded. And we gave the mission teams a choice. They could either work on our construction job sites, or we can go down and help disaster relief people go down to Weslaco. All the teams decided that they would go down to Weslaco and help them clean out their houses, clean out the sheetrock. We call it mucking the houses. Christian Relief sent a truck down to help us out. We helped them unload that. The Bridge Street Church of Christ was where they kind of centered their location. And we had worked on a project when Hurricane Harvey came through, and it was actually our first mission trip. We took a group of 20 to Rockport, to Portland, to where that hurricane came through, and we were doing the same thing up there. So we had a little experience, and they recognized us, and they kind of put us in charge of selecting the widows or invalids or divorced people or whatever, the ones that we could help the most. This house had 2 feet of water in it, so you can imagine. You know what? It only takes about 2 days for that mold to start stinking. I mean, it's incredible. It almost takes your breath away. It's about 110 degrees there with that smell and heat. It was a tough mission trip for those kiddos. We distributed 511 backpacks. That's my house with the team in there dividing up the backpacks. They go out to all the kids going back to school in the valley. And we also go down into Mexico and take care of those kids also. Christian Chronicle heard about some things going on with the border when Trump was going on, and they had a lot of homeless people. They would get across the border, they would send them back, make them wait on the other side. And a lot of people just didn't have a place to stay. So he wanted to go see what it was about. So we made some sandwiches, took about 200 sandwiches down there, took him across, found the places where these people lived and prayed with them. They decided to do an article on the work that was being done down there. And then COVID hit. Anybody know about that? 20 and 21, we changed what our model was completely, and it became a mission of getting food and rations to people that were out of work. Mexico was devastated. They shut them down. When that government says shut down, they mean shut down. They don't let you do anything. Recently, about a month and a half ago, they opened our border back up again, and we were able to get across and do some of the things that that are needed. 21, we tried to get started again, and excuse me, had 4 teams come down. The last 2 teams came, they started getting infected. We had a kind of a party for the last group that came down. They were from Paducah, Kentucky, and the family that we brought in, I think, is where we all picked it up, but they had 12, and it was 5 of our guys got it. In fact, our intern, the boy on the right there, passed away, and our missions coordinator's mother passed away, and his mother-in-law, so we had some losses in that, so we had to shut down. This year, we are booked solid. Everybody's ready to get up and get to work. So we are excited. We think we're going to have a great year. This is called Project Reynosa. If you like to build churches, we found a place that works. McAllen is the top arrow, Reynosa is the bottom arrow, about 7 miles apart. There are 12 industrial parks in the Reynosa area. Each of these industrial parks have these Maquiladora plants. There are over 200 of them. And then the government came in, and that's an aerial photo of housing. There are like 5,000 houses there, and they are 400 to 600 square feet, and they are available for people that are moving up from the center part of Mexico. Remember that young man that came from Chontla? Comes up from Mexico, they provide them a place to live. And in 2008, we accidentally planted a church next to one of these housing complexes. And in 2 years, we had about 200 people meeting in that little church complex. That's the building that was built. Well, we've got 4 churches put in there, and there is several more sites that we have our eyeballs on. Excuse me. But what we found out was that these families that are coming from central and southern Mexico, they're younger, they got children, they're employed, they're homeowners, and probably the most important statement here is that they are displaced. When we try to evangelize deeper in Mexico, we run into a Catholic discrimination. I mean, they will shun the people if they leave that Catholic side. So it is a wonderful opportunity for us to get families. They're trying to connect with people in the community. We have a church setting. They can meet with other people with similar life skills. It's transportation friendly, so they don't have to have cars and things to get there. And we found out that it's an amazing opportunity. This is the last church that was planted, the first one I've ever been involved in building. Y'all may not know the story, but we had a man that started this mission work that was my mentor for 20 years. And we were planning on hiring somebody to kind of help take this over. We're getting a little older, and the churches that were supporting us said, hey, you guys need to think about y'all not going to live forever. And so we were looking around trying to find someone, and then Craig up and dies on us. And it was one of those moments, when everybody's looking at you, and why are y'all looking at me? I realize there's sometimes in life where you get a calling. And that calling was, I wish I'd have paid a little closer attention to who I was meeting and who was coming down and who was in charge of what, because I was going to be put in charge of this thing. That was about 5 years ago. This was the first structure that I was involved in building. But it has been a blessing, an amazing blessing in my life to be able to be involved with this. How much time have I got left? 5. Well, a little bit of the results. Y'all heard about the backpacks, but over the years there's been 7,500 children have received backpacks through this program. MAGI Boxes, over 54,000, almost 55,000 boxes have been distributed. Holiday parties, 8,000 children have received holiday gifts from this campaign. Construction of church facilities, 6 in the U.S., 9 worship facilities in Mexico have been built. Almost 50 homes, brand new homes have been built. 52 major remodels, 30 minor remodels. Painting houses, 2021, we didn't paint very many, but over the years, there's been 350 houses painted. Sometimes we will be in an area of a colonia where we're planning to have a church building, and we'll just go up to somebody we don't know and say, would you like your house painted? What color you want? And why are y'all doing this? So we're planting a church here, and we wanted to introduce ourselves. What a great way to introduce ourselves. VBS is over 215 or 215. Houses that we did in Weslaco, 55 houses. Visiting mission teams, we only had 3. Remember, we had 29 in 19, but we're already full. Over the years, we've had almost 600 groups. Can you imagine a little church down in South Texas where 600 groups come down and help us do work in the community? Preacher school, we've had to change some things. They're not meeting as many as they used to. We've had 70 graduates. But this year, that number's a little low there on the bottom. He's talking about 60 students. When this thing came up and they started going online, that kind of opened their eyes, and now he's got 20 students over in Africa that are going to preacher school with the translations abilities of Google and that sort of thing. I think he's up to 120 now, if I'm not mistaken. Conversions over the last 25, 30 years, 3,800 baptisms had been done. In fact, 1,400 Spanish-speaking Christians are meeting today because of a cold front that came through the valley in 1983. The thing that we're starting this year, excuse me, a gentleman that we've worked with for a number of years, Max Moore, developed a program where he can teach English online, interactive on a computer using the Bible. And he's doing a test program at Lake Chapala down in Mexico. This is one of the most unique men I've ever met. He's single, talks too much. It drives me crazy. In fact, my predecessor would carry a bell in his pocket and ring it when he was talking too much and make him slow down a bit. He developed this program, and he just can't stop talking about it. He's got funding for it. One of the guys that graduated from the preacher school in South Texas went on and graduated from Honduras, Baxter Institute, went to Ecuador, came back with a big proposal for us to say, I've got a program, I think I can be, I need support, I want to start this area. I said, would you be willing to go work at Lake Chapala and help Max develop this program? Then you can take that program wherever you want. So we just put this man on. He's one of the latest ministers that we've hired. They call it your English school. It's free. It's online. They're doing Lake Chapala right now. He has 120 signed up. We had a couple that came out of Brazil, worshiped with him for a little bit. She's a doctor. He's a nurse, pharmacist. They met teaching the indigenous Indians in Brazil, got married. They were in South Texas for a while, and then they had to leave because of passports and things. Went to Panama, but now they're getting ready to go to some Indians that are in Sierra Madre Occidental, south of Durango, Mexico. This is the greatest family I believe I've ever met doing this work. They have been able to fund their own stuff. Until recently, the inflation factor in Brazil is awful, 50% or something. So we've taken that project on, and they have a unique ability to meet people. We got Healing Hands to talk to that they think that they'll be able to do a water well in that area. So that'll be another connection for him to be able to meet with that group. This is the guy that just retired from Iowa Road, Iglesia de Cristo. He wanted to go down to Chiapas. Changed his mind, wanted to be closer with his kids, but he's still going to be living in Mexico. We think we're going to use him to travel around and encourage the men that are in Mexico. We haven't been able to travel down there like we have. This is the man that took over his work at Iowa Road. This is the guy that your kids will be meeting or you'll be meeting when you come down there. He's the missions coordinator taking over my spot. That's his wife, Giovanna. Funny story, she's Border Patrol agent. I don't think as one citizen in any of those churches out there, so we ask her please not to wear a uniform when she goes out there. This is our new projects coordinator, Ephraim. He is the most loving guy I believe I've ever met. He absolutely takes over those children. When somebody has a question, he stops whatever he's doing, sits down right there at the moment, shows the youngster how to do something, how to work the tool, how to put it together. Never seen him without a smile. Man, this guy was made for this work. This is what it looks like when we have a payroll meeting. We bring everybody into my house. Everybody gets to see what everybody's doing. And that's the glue that holds this together. That's my wife. Keeps me focused and in line. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys being interested in what we do. I'll be around for a while. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask.